Craft news and institutions a little after 2 p.m. on Tuesday. We're going to have a discussion with Secretary Moore and Eric Blatt, Director of Engineering. And we're looking to talk about our new line with our new sheets. We're here to talk about a couple things, but one of them being with lines 186, our A&R Municipal Pollution Control Grants. So welcome to you both. And I guess what we'd like to know as much as anything, the governor recommended that there'd be $10 million in FY24. The House has cut it down by $6 million to $4 million. And we're wondering two things. One is, what does this program do? And the other is, why are you missing $6 million? So what say you guys?
The second part's a little tougher to answer. Wider. So these are pollution control grants that go to municipalities that are constructing improvements to wastewater treatment plants, collection sewers, pump stations, a whole array of wastewater and stormwater. And the grants go to projects that are on our adopted priority list. We're working on the list right now. And I have a handout that shows the projects that are in our queue. We're good. So,
yeah, we'd like to, yes, please.
It's two pages, two sides.
One page on each side or two pages?
It's a two-page document. The totals are at the bottom of the second page. There's some extra copies. And it's
okay, there we go.
Alphabetical, yes.
So one page on both sides is two pages.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Sorry.
Okay. Eric, I'm sorry, sometimes you just gotta spell it out.
Yeah.
You're off to really good.
Don't be shy with us now. You look smarter than what we are.
Okay. So this is about 100 projects that are in our queue, and by in our queue means we've had some type of activity, whether it's through the very initial stages of project development, feasibility level, preliminary engineering. So this sheet is broken up into sort of three blocks. In the center, you'll see project and funding status at FY23. So a little more detail on the FY23 projects. We just know more about them. So that's divvied up into these various steps. So step one loan, that means preliminary engineering. And we've given a sense of where the project is at currently. This is as of last week. And I will say that these projects, funding, status, all evolve, constantly evolve. But this was a snapshot in time. A lot of the information here is based on applications that we received for the coming priority list. And that will show up in the next set of columns labeled FY24 and then FY25. And this is a mixture of both the pollution control grants and the clean water SRF loans. Most of this money is in fact the SRF loan program. The pollution control grants are sort of it's a companion source of funding that goes with these loans for those communities that qualify for grants. Not all communities qualify. There's a set of criteria that we use to assign points to these projects. Well, we use that same point system to determine the percentage of grant that the community will receive. And at the moment, we're still vetting the current list. I think we're pretty far along. You'll see in one instance where South Burlington on the back side, 24 column grant, you'll see under review. It's a very large project. The first review indicated a very high grant value, and we kind of questioned whether the information was complete. So that is still under review. the list of projects will probably be made available. The official list as a draft list will be made available in early May. That's the actual
Early May.
early May. Early.
So this, monies that we have here, the 4 million that we have, where we had 10. This is monies that you are, the state would, contribute partial payment to a plan. And what part of, is it varying in varying stages as far as how much money that you're contributing? What percentage of a project are you contributing to?
Right. So the range is 10% is the floor, and 35% is max, and that's set with statute.
10%.
Basically, with some exceptions, all the projects are fully eligible for the full amount of grant. So in other words, if we have $1 million wastewater treatment facility improvement project, and that project qualifies for a 35% grant, then that project will get $350,000 if the money is available. And those grants are available when projects go to construction, not during planning. So the Clean Water SRF program is the primary source of funding for plant as well as construction. But it's basically come out of Clean Water SRF.
You have additional funding elsewhere in the budget? Or no, for something like this? Okay, so this $10 million the governor put in there is to get us best down this list as what you can get down.
So
what doesn't get done when you lose $6 million? Any projects that you've committed to?
So the best way to get a gauge, because I can't answer that precisely, is look at the column over to the right in the FY24 section, and where it says grant.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the estimated grants for all of these projects right now. Again, as I said earlier, the precise numbers are subject to change. So if you go over to the left side, you see bond vote status. That is one of the best indicators that of the project's ability to move forward.
Yeah.
So you can match up those communities that have passed their bonds already and that qualify for grant.
You know what that total is without us doing that?
An earlier version of this, the numbers have been revised a little bit. An earlier version, I think we provided it to the committee, was a little bit over 14 million.
Okay.
I will say though, at the time that we put that list together, which was in mid-March, we had just compiled the projects. The applications to get on the priority list, the due date was March 1st, so it was still in the early stages of our vetting process. And one project in particular, Mount Space Sewer Line project, which I think is a $16 million project broken into 2 phases. The amount of grant that was showing up in the list that was provided to the committee then was $915,000 change. The actual grant amount is closer to $2+ million. So that's just one example. And again, that was the list that we provided then was a subset of this with earlier numbers. And it was just those projects that had already passed bond votes that would be on the 24 adopted project list. So that the aggregate value of grant exceeded $10 million.
So this is different than the state match for IIJA, clean water and drinking water state revolving funds. This is different funding mechanism. Okay, so different program. So that money from one doesn't bleed over to the other. Are there any match monies is there any federal dollars that are being impacted here because we don't have match money for this? Or is this just a funded program by the state or a supposed funded program by the state that these communities are looking to get some portion of?
Right, we're not at risk of losing some other federal dollars. However, it's very conveniently these dollars that go towards projects in the Lake Champlain Basin, those dollars can be used as match to Lake Champlain Basin.
So what are we gonna say to these communities that have passed the bond vote and expecting this dollars and we don't have those dollars there? How are we gonna make that determination? Who makes that phone call?
We do. We let them know that we only have so much money and we will go down in priority order, and fund the projects that both in terms of priority and readiness. See, there's another major step for these projects, even after they pass the bond, and that's completing final design and getting the contract documents together to put the project out to bid. That's the next major milestone.
Without, this isn't a loaded question, and I don't want it to be a loaded question. It's gonna sound like a loaded question. And I don't want it to be a loaded question.
That's the same one I have.
Where did going from 10 million to 4 million, where did that number come from? And the easiest word is, I don't know.
Well, partially don't know. I guess what I did here is.
But it wasn't a number that you said that, no, we can live with it.
No, it was, the comparison was made to the 3.3 million that we have been receiving for a number of years, and that went through the Clean Water Board. And I think, Julie, that it had been bumped up by the board to 10 million, but I've not actually seen the
It was.
documentation.
So as you may recall from the prior testimony, the Clean Water Board reviews municipal pollution control grants as part of our larger funding set of recommendations that come to the governor and then the legislature in support of our obligations with EPA. We had initially recommended $3.3 million. The governor then, in his review of the budget, bumped it up to 10. That proposal came back to the Clean Water Board at our January meeting, and we unanimously endorsed the governor's proposal, in part in light of the long list of projects that's out there right now, and recognizing that these projects are important to achieving or fulfilling our obligations to EPA.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So sort of tag along with the chair's question. Do you know whether the other 6 was reallocated in the capital budget, or was it just not there anymore? And again, I realize that might
I
be.
can speak to that. This is one-time general fund money that's been moved into a capital line. And my understanding is that $6 million was put back and redirected to other house priorities outside of the capital bill.
Thank you.
So you brought up an interesting point, Mr. Black, and I just want to dig down a little bit deeper. And by no way am I trying to do anything other than try to figure out what we could do best, if we could do anything at all. So out of this $4 million, now all these projects that we have on this sheet of paper that say passed, and then you say that there's a final review or a engineering study that they have to do, or whatever, a design that they have to do. Does this $4 million cover those projects that are to that point?
That, I don't know the status of design for all these projects. Haven't taken the analysis that far to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. So,
Senator,
yes.
Can I just amplify one point that Eric made, which is regarding funds that we received from the Lake Champlain Basin Program?
Yeah.
So as the committee may be aware, in addition to state funds for clean water, we have this longstanding partnership with the Lake Champlain Basin Program. They have a variety of federal funding sources that come through them, including some IIJA money as well as base appropriation through EPA. In order to access those dollars, we do need to demonstrate a state match, dollar for dollar. We are on tap to receive, I believe, $12 million in their current fiscal budget of funding that we'll need to match. And these municipal pollution control grants, it's not like the SRF match where they all go into the SRF pot. We just have to show we're making investments in related areas that we can then count as the match for these basin program dollars. And these municipal pollution control grants are one of our go-to places. This is a fairly significant increase we're seeing in funding from the basin program because they've also received a tranche of IIJA money. I believe in total they've received $40 million that's going to be sort of distributed to the 2 states, Vermont and New York, at $8 million ago each of the next 5 years. So our obligation to be able to show them that we're making state level investments has increased in a way that we didn't anticipate, particularly as the Clean Water Board when we were building our budget last summer for FY '24.
Okay,
So can I come back to your question about
Please.
design readiness to proceed? Keeping in mind that once we adopt the list, it is good for the entire fiscal year. So even though a community may not have developed design today, they're given the opportunity to complete the design over the course of the fiscal year. And as long as they are ready to go to construction before June 30 of next year, they can receive the construction grant funding.
committee, any questions?
Yeah, I do, but I don't know how to phrase it, so bear with me as I think out loud. And I'll ask the secretary. So I would assume that we can demonstrate our commitment to the Lake Champlain folks with the 4 million. Are there other ways in which we can demonstrate that same commitment so that we can be fairly assured of the 12 million?
It becomes challenging. We provide a lot of documentation of match to the basin program, and I don't think we've worked through what our alternative would look like absent having that $10 million.
Okay, that's fair answer. And I guess my further question would be to Eric. So let's just say that it's gonna be 4, and that by June 30th, there's a bunch of people that are ready to go. Will you reduce each grant proportionately, or will you somehow prioritize one over another in terms of, you mentioned these point things that you keep track of?
It would be based on the priority points that
Okay.
the project receives. We fund them at the full value until we work our way down.
So there's nothing
left, and then they would potentially show up again in the next year's priority list.
Eric, can you speak a little bit to what happened during Tropical Storm Irene, where we delayed match and sort of put ourselves in a hole, which I think we run the risk of doing again here?
So there were 2 projects in particular, South Burlington and Brattleboro, that were eligible for sizable grants, about 5 million each. And the program was asked to basically delay its requests for capital funding in the wake of TS Irene. So much of the money was needed to repair the Waterbury office complex. So program held off for a number of years, and then came back to the legislature in 2016. That was the beginning of sort of this period where we were asking each year for money for grant funds, both apply those dollars retroactively, as well as new projects.
Yep.
But it took a number of years to obtain all of the funds necessary to meet those full obligations. And so we could see a repeat of that scenario. We have projects ready to go that qualify for grants, but don't receive them when they're ready to go. In some cases, they'll take on loans to make their project whole, and then, which is what actually happened with these 2 projects in particular. There were others, but those were the 2 that really stand out because of the magnitude of the dollars. We then later on, once the money is available, provide a grant and reduce the principal on their loan. That's the mechanism we use.
John Harrison.
Thanks. No, this funding is really critical, and I just want to thank Secretary for sitting with me and going through these documents. Appreciate it. And this is very helpful because I can read it. But just if the answer to this is no, then we can talk later. But is this related to this?
So this is the current intended use plan.
Right. But it's this list.
There's going to be, yes, some projects that didn't proceed on the 22 federal IUP.
Yeah.
Federal fiscal year IUP, which is the current 23 state fiscal year. There will be some
In
that
this.
will also be here, yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm
There is
making
going to be
progress.
overlap.
then.
Again, this list, projects that we are engaged in at one level or another, or will be coming to us through this next 24 IUP.
And then have
The
more.
last column is the 25 column.
Yeah.
There's less information known about those projects, and you'll see that I haven't teased out grant and loan.
Mhm.
We don't apply points to projects in successive years, only the year that's coming up. So and then the points again affect the amount of grant that a community is getting. All we know is the total project cost for those projects. So that's why you just see a single figure there in the last column.
Right. Okay, yeah, I just wanna, I'm getting closer, and I appreciate the information and the time. And that's really, I mean, these are alphabetical, but you
Yes.
probably could put them in some order of likelihood. But,
Yeah.
but this is fine.
That can be done.
I mean, it's basically like folks who have something going on.
Well, if you look at the step 2 loan column, that would probably give you a better sense. But we could have projects coming into us now that are applying for step 2 that aren't showing up yet on this list.
And they would still be viable to
To be able to move
be
forward
in
in
this,
24?
in this schedule, yeah.
Yes.
All right, so it changes.
Yes. The numbers, right. It's
a living
It's a
document.
living document, absolutely, and again, keep in mind, these aren't state assets, so it's harder for us to manage. These are municipal projects that we're.
Yeah, and this is a really good way, at least for me, I find this much more helpful than, I know you have to do the others for federal government and yourselves and stuff, but did you do this just for us, this format?
This was in response to a request from the House Correctional Institutions.
Okay.
The House asked, what are the projects in your queue that could get funding in 23, 24, 25?
Okay, well,
You still
I'm
took that
finding
big of
it
a haircut.
helpful, so
Yes.
what?
And they still took that big of a haircut.
It already trimmed it. This was last week that we
Okay.
were asked to come in and show them what projects are in our queue.
Committee, anything on this? We have more to talk about on the A&R. We can come back if you think of another question, but anything immediate right now on this topic?
Good.
Okay. Everybody good? Yep. Okay, probably a mute point on the next one, but we're talking about it's under you guys, Agency of Natural Resources, dam safety and hydrology projects. Hydrology, help me. Hydrology project. Boy, I was stuttering and carrying
Just
on.
say water.
Yeah, there we go. So we had $1 million, it's down to 500,000. What's the reason for that?
Can we,
Uh,
Senator Ingles, can we reorder just one and talk briefly about this repeal section? Because
Yes,
I have to depart.
yes, okay, fair
And
enough.
then I'll leave you with Ben and Eric.
Yeah,
Right, so I think we have 7
well,
slides.
we have that in the bill correct now, right?
It is, and we can just explain exactly what it allows, why it's important.
Yeah, okay, there we
That would
go.
be helpful.
There we go, yes.
Right, so if the committee understands what the basic purpose of this repeal is, then we can skip some of these slides and just get to maybe the 3rd slide.
That's what we wanted.
So the 3rd slide basically just explains that the funding of private activity through the Clean Water Act is permissible at the federal level. And we finally adopted some of these eligibilities through Act 185 back in 2018. So we expanded the eligibility of the Clean Water SRF. There are controls on private activity. There's a 20% cap on the fund that can go towards privates. Municipalities have to be ranked higher than the privates. And also, any private project has to receive municipal support in order for us to fund it. So those are some basics. We'll move to the next slide. This just describe some of the kinds of projects that we've been able to fund through the Clean Water Rescue Act for privates. And then on the next slide, it's an actual listing of the dollars that have gone out the door for privates. Some of these are what we classify as natural resource projects and conservation projects. You'll see a number of them at the top that fall into that category of land is conserved. And also another feature of some of these large projects, and you'll see in the second and third rows, Vermont Land Trust, Trust for Public Land, those funds have been fully repaid. They were very short-term loans. The appeal of the funds for some of these large land acquisitions that it provides lower cost interim financing. These are only intended to be 5-year loans, and in some cases, they pay them off well before the 5-year term. So it's been a pretty successful program so far. I'll just say that the three at the top, the Ralston property, Worcester Woods, Mount Hunger Headwaters, it's about 11,000 acres that were conserved. It's about 11 million that just so happens to be that. Match $11 million. And then at the very bottom, probably the single largest loan to a private entity other than for the land conservation, 48 million for the Vernon Advent Christian Home. They're rebuilding their soil-based wastewater disposal system. That gives you a sense of projects that we funded, and there's just some photos that you can see before and after photos. And then the last slide is the dam removal project.
Just a nice segue to
Yes.
Gettysburg.
So now what the Waterbury Dam's gonna look like?
Yes. And I'll switch seats.
Can I ask just one question?
Yes, please.
Just a small question. Could a manufacturing plant, like a processing plant that used dairy, get one of those loans?
Yeah.
To do pre-treatment before
Yeah.
stuff went into the municipal system?
Oh, okay. If tied to a municipal system, that
Yeah.
gets a little trickier. The municipality would have to sponsor a loan.
Okay,
It's connected to a municipal system.
okay. I just thought it might be a way for them to finance it if it was a lot.
Yeah. Cabot Creamery, for example, we had at one time been working with them on a potential loan. They're not for their wastewater, non-domestic wastewater. And so that wasn't tied to a municipal system, so that was a permissible project.
Okay.
Yes, there's a sort of convoluted eligibility issue with privates that are connected to a municipal treatment facility.
Thanks. And the Vernon project, I know was super important. I was down there when that was happening. I know they really had a problem and they provide wonderful services.
They've been pumping and falling
Excellent nursing home.
at a very high cost for quite a while.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so on to the dam safety. And where we were at $1 million and now we're down to 500,000. So what's going on with that?
Well, I have a presentation you always cut to the chase, sounds like, past circles.
Well, whatever's gonna be best. I mean, we have time, so whatever you wanna do, just, I don't know, here's where it's at. We're chasing money for you right now. I don't know, thank you, Secretary.
Thank you.
Yep, we're chasing money for you right now. I don't know if we're going to get that $500,000 back to where you were at $1 million. My preference, I think, would be that if we did, even if we could find that money, we'd probably put it to the first project that was being presented here. But let's hear it anyway. Let's hear the quick version and see if we've got more to talk about.
Sure, okay. So it's gonna-
Do you want me to share the screen?
I think the ability to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, there we go.
Okay, great. Well, so my name is Ben Green. I'm the section chief dam safety engineer for the Department of Environmental Conservation. And I can just move to the next slide. This next slide is a very brief overview of our program. Our mission statement is listed there. Essentially, our mission is to, you know, serve to reduce risks associated with dams to life, property, and the environment. And we do that through two main functions, kind of equally important, but actually quite a bit different. One is through dam regulation, and one is through dam ownership. We regulate about 900 non-hydropower, non-federal dams in the state. And we're also directly responsible for the ownership of 14 state-owned dams. As part of the dam ownership piece, we perform on-the-ground flood operations and maintenance, and we do emergency planning and long-term improvement planning for those dams. Our staff size, you can see here, is a fairly small group, and we cover a lot of ground. Next slide, please. And some of you may be aware that our program was audited last year. It was a regulatory side of our program that was audited, and they provided some recommendations that are kind of helping to guide us forward and kind of inform both sides of our business. The main outcomes of the audit are listed here. Number one was adopt dam safety rules, and this is something that really resonates through all of dam safety, and that's something we're in the process of doing with the goal of having rules adopted by 2024. Historically, the state of Vermont has not had dam safety rules. We've had very limited authorities. So unfortunately, we have a fairly large number of dams in the state, both state-owned and not state-owned, that are not in very good condition, and there wasn't much we could do about it in the past.
How many dams, Ben, are you guys monitoring now?
So on the regulatory side, we regulate about 900.
900 dams.
And we directly own, as part of the DEC, 14. And then we also are involved in A&R dams, which are dams owned by the DEC. So it's R14 plus those aren't owned by Forest Parks and Recreation, which is about 15, and Fish and Wildlife, which is about 70. So that puts A&R owned dams at about 100, which makes us the biggest dam owner in the state, single dam owner in the state.
Yeah. And the rest are municipal, private?
No, that includes municipal and private. The majority of the rest are, there's roughly 1,000 dams in the state. The rest are hydropower dams, and those are either part of that sector, and they're regulated by Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. There's about 80 of those, or they're older and they're regulated by the Public Utility Commission, which is about 20 of those. So we deal with the greatest number of dams.
How many dams are producing power in the state? Do you know?
Roughly 100.
100 dams. Okay.
So as I said, the rules are really going to resonate through. There's some other general recommendations here that we're undertaking, improving our dam inventory. I say there's 900 dams. There's probably some more out there that we're finding. There's improvements being made to really understanding what is out there. We're also working on getting that to be a public-facing website that people can use. Improving our inspection procedures. Part of what we do as part of our regulation is we do what's called periodic inspection of those regulated dams. We basically do perform visual inspections. We've been improving that process, improving our efficiencies, and also writing rules about how that should really be done. So it will really be formalized more so in the future than it is now. And then, as I mentioned also here, assessing staffing levels. Like I said, we cover a lot of ground with not a whole lot of staff. Which kind of brings us back to our ownership side and sort of the unmet need that we have in terms of A&R owned dams only. Again, looking about the 100 dams that A&R owns. And just some kind of quick facts about those is that about a third of A&R owned dams are rated in poor or unsatisfactory condition, which is actually slightly better than the state average, which is 40 to 50%, but still unacceptable. And particularly with the rules upcoming, that we're going to have to start regulating to prevent that from continuing. We're not going to be allowed to continue to keep our dams in that condition. Another factoid is that 80% of our dams are more than 50 years old. Many of the components on these dams had a 50-year design life. So while many of them are holding up fairly well, they're in need of upgrade, even if they're not in poor and unsatisfactory condition at this time. It's going to be needed in the future. In 2021, we were tasked with doing a very rough estimate of what the need would be to repair and bring up to code or bring up to compliance all roughly 100 A&R owned dams, except for the 3 major flood control dams, which are Waterbury, Wrightsville, and East Barre. Those are sort of in a bucket all themselves when it came to that estimate, because they're essentially bigger and more expensive than many of the other dams. And the estimate at that time, using 2020 and earlier numbers, but based on a federal study, was about 25 million. Just today, we actually, that same group that put out that study that we based our numbers on updated their numbers, and current costs are 1.5 to 2 times higher. So I'm willing to bet that 25 million is, we haven't had a chance to rerun the numbers as it's so new, but there's probably likely more than 25 million needed to bring all of our dams up into compliance, which really highlights the need to have money available each year for us to start working on projects, to start picking these off and improving our inventory, which
Where else do you get money from other than capital goods?
we have, at the current moment, we have about $5 million we've been working through of one-time general fund monies that we've been using. And we're actually using that to fund, if you move the slide, please, this study that we're doing is sort of setting ourselves up to be a little more organized and prioritized with our way we work through projects. In the dam safety industry, sort of the more modern way of thinking of how to prioritize projects is strictly by risk, the risk of projects posed, and reducing that risk or buying down that risk as much as possible. There's never enough money to address every single project, so it's best to address the highest risk ones first. So we're right now underway on an A&R dam risk assessment project where we picked 18 A&R dams that are rated high and significant hazard potential. Just to back up quickly, there's 4 hazard potentials of dams are rated in the state of Vermont: a high hazard, significant, low, and minimal. High hazard dams are, regardless of condition, just as largely due to where they're located, if they were to fail, it would result in probable loss of life. So those are our highest priority typically. And then significant hazard dams are those that if they were to fail, while loss of life is not probable, significant amount of property damage is anticipated. So high and significance are typically what we focus on. And this A&R risk assessment will help us even focus further as will allow us to work through that list of 18 and identify which one's actually the highest risk down to which one's of the 18 the least high risk. And so it allows us to prioritize our funding to buy down the stage risk and reduce risk as much as possible with the funds that we have allocated. And if you move the slide to the next page, we have that list of dams that are going through this risk assessment. But we're already moving forward with a few projects that aren't actually on here because they're a little bit working ahead. We have 2 projects right now. Again, Waterbury and Waterbury is held aside, but we have Noise Pond Dam and Silver Lake Dam are high and significant hazard dam that are belong to DEC that are in engineering assessment right now, and we'll move to design and construction hopefully next year. And then we're hoping to have the results of this study back later this year and be able to immediately turn and start to work through the list of projects based on, from highest priority down. Realizing that it's going to take some years to get through these, but we need kind of a constant inflow of funds to be able to do that, to be able to kind of keep continually moving through this list.
So the $1 million that was put in there by the governor's recommend was to fund basically what we're talking about right now.
Right, it was allowed us to get as far down that list as we can, and realistically $1 million a year, our project costs, an average project cost on some of these smaller dams, probably a pretty reasonable range, like 300,000 to $1 million, kind of depending on a lot of different factors. So it could be the difference between, 1 or 2 projects, in a year that we might be able to push through. So.
Committee.
Interesting. I didn't know a lot of this. It's really helpful.
It is very interesting.
Yeah.
It very, very is. So,
I guess I do have just one question. Is Townsend Dam? That seems like, is that not?
I believe that's an Army Corps regulated dam. So
okay.
we do not regulate hydropower dams or dams that are owned or operated by the federal government. Okay. So the Army Corps dams in the Connecticut Basin are not under our oversight either.
I thought, to be fair, to be honest with you, of all the things that I've gone through, we go through a lot of stuff. This, I can remember when Eric was going through this with us last year, and I don't think you were here, Ben, when we were doing it, but this amazed me the most, the amount of dams that we actually had in this state. And really kind of scary on some of what the conditions of them were, but well, we thank you, and we have a lot of work to do in your section still, and I think that we will be back in touch with you folks. So we'll discuss some things as committee, and we'll move on. But we thank you for your time very, very much. Great presentations, great information, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, committee. Gonna move on now to Chief of Operations, Department of Corrections, Al Cormier. Al, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good, good. Thank you for coming in today. I just want to make sure we get section 22, make sure we get to where we want to get to. That's on the bill itself. I think a lot of what we were talking about, Mr. Cormier, is, I just want to get there. And that's passed by the House, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of what we're gonna ask you has probably been answered by others, other than the fact that you weren't here to answer for yourself.
Okay.
So I think that we just
So we'll
wanna,
see if you say
we
the
wanna kind of make sure that those, we just wanna kind of make sure, because we're getting ready on a lot of this language on this bill, we're changing some language on this bill, and, we just wanna make sure that DOC is on board with this type of language. The Department of Buildings and General Services shall coordinate with the Department of Corrections on the design and planning for any maintenance, renovation, or construction to a state correctional facility to ensure that evidence-based design principles for wellness environments are incorporated into the design and planning phase of a project. We want to know if that is, in fact, what your intentions are.
So yes. Al Cormier, Chief of Operations, I'll identify myself before I start. So yes, that language makes sense. We have been using the language trauma-informed, gender-informed. That's kind of the national term through the American Correctional Association, American Probation and Parole Association, Correctional Leaders of America. I'll focus on the trauma-informed or gender-informed.
And they're using a little bit different language, but according to what they're saying, it's the same, but wouldn't it make sense to put their language in your language, even if it's extra words in there, just to make sure that there's no misinterpretation of where it's at?
I think it does. Where we're at, I think this is.
Or are you okay with their language?
I am okay with their language, and this is becoming standard through a lot of the legislative bills right now, and the wording throughout the legislative bills. And this is where BGS is going with a lot of their projects, is around the evidence-based model. We've used evidence-based, we've used best practice. I mean, they're all really interchangeable, so we understand the intent of what this language means, and it's not gonna veer us off the direction we're going now.
Okay. Committee, I hate to have brought Al all the way in here and just to ask him that simple thing, but we actually just didn't get a chance to ask him that. And he couldn't make it in the other day. And any questions, any more that you want to bring to the table?
No, if you look at page 35, I mean, they do use trauma-informed to describe the practices. So I think they're in harmony here with what we heard from the others that were in. We're talking about evidence-based principles for wellness environments for supporting trauma-informed practices. And I think, as Al said, that's pretty much in concert with what we heard before.
Yeah, I think to your point, Senator, that does bring in both sets of terms in that one paragraph.
So maybe we're gonna-
I will tell you, we will say this because we've shared it with other folks. We have taken out some language in the bill that we thought that was maybe telling people how to do their jobs. I will say that this committee is pretty focused on as fast as we can get a new facility sited and plans to start, and to get these folks out of the situation that they're in at Chittenden would be what we would be very interested in. It's about the only part of this bill where we have differed from, where we changed a lot of language from the House, where we thought that maybe they were unfairly pushing certain parties. This one is one that we're in total agreement with them.
Excellent.
And so we are probably going to keep some timelines in there, some reporting stuff in there. some stuff to show us that I know we understand that you can only go as fast as what can happen, but we're gonna be very interested in the progress.
Yep, absolutely, and we're looking forward to providing that information. I know that report language is in here for November. That's easy, we'll certainly have that to you. But yeah, we're continuing to work with BGS. We've got a meeting scheduled for Thursday with the commissioners and ourselves. Yeah, so our
We
intent is
appreciate
to
that,
push
sir.
this as quickly as we can as well.
Have you done any interaction with the main folks?
Yes.
Main UC? Okay, so
Yes.
you're,
They're
Right.
familiar with my-
Terrific.
they're
Okay,
close
great.
with them, yes.
thank you.
So I'll keep Al for a few more minutes. What the heck? I'm curious, state to state, is there normally reluctance on the part of a lot of communities to house? And maybe we're not calling them corrections facilities anymore, maybe there's a better term for it, reentry or whatever. It seems like there's a lot of not in my backyard kind of attitude, and I don't know whether we're unique in that regard or whether that's pretty much standard.
No, we're not unique at all. I talk with a lot of folks from around the country through the CLA organization, and many agencies face the same thing, which in turn leads to their staffing crisis. Because what they end up doing is finding a location that's very remote because cities and towns don't want them in their backyards. So they find a very remote location that is
People work.
off the radar, and then they can't find people to work. So, it's that balance with finding a location where you can fully staff a correctional facility while still keeping the communities informed and feeling safe. I think the media doesn't do us any favors with television shows, right? I mean, the common television shows are all about negative press throughout the person. It's all the bad things that happen.
Yeah.
It's not a reality. I mean, do bad things happen? Yes, but there's a lot of good things that happen too, and we're hoping to change that, especially with that reentry facility, to show that there is good and that people can change.
Is there, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is there a men's reentry facility?
Not in Vermont now.
But as it progresses and as we change the way we envision restorative behavior, that is in fact.
It's highlighted in the HOK study, the 10-year plan. There's plans for men's reentry as well, so. Things that we're working on, part of that, the process, and we talked a little bit about it this morning in committee, was around the change in industries to vocational. That vocational training will get that population ready for reentry. That's one step in that reentry process without having an official facility, but the work simulators, construction simulators, and CDL simulators that we're looking to invest in and work with the local CTEs on will get that population prepared for that.
Right, are they ever able to go to the CTEs separately?
No, we haven't been able to do that, but as we look at policy, specifically with the women's reentry and looking at how we're doing things and how we need to do things differently, that's part of it. We have language around work release furloughs for individuals that could technically be work if we're getting them trained for a job, so we could potentially utilize that language for a furlough to get them to a CTE to utilize those services.
Are we still pursuing the juvenile center? That still works?
Yeah, DCF still has that one, the temporary facilities.
Yeah.
I think they've moved away from the St. Albans site, but I'm not 100% sure on that one, but.
Anything else for Al? Sorry to make you come all the way in
All
here for
good.
that, but I thought it was very important that we at least make sure that as much as we were assured we hadn't heard from you directly, and we appreciate you taking the time and coming in and making sure we're on the right track.
I
with that.
appreciate having me in here to get that, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks.
Okay, committee. So just to talk about some of what we've been learning today. I'm gonna talk out loud a little bit. Just kind of disappointed a little bit on some of these projects that I think that are very detrimental to Vermont's ecology. It's a word that they don't use anymore, but the Vermont's environment. of ensuring clean water and doing all the right things, and that there's some of the money's come up missing and where we didn't have enough to begin with. And I'm gonna try to find a little bit more somewhere along the way. I'd like to find somewhere along the way where I don't know if we can restore $6 million back to that $10 million fund, but, and please, you know, you guys need to speak up because I don't want to chase down a rabbit hole that my committee's not going to support. But I just think that there's so many projects on that list that the commissioner and Mr. Blatt had showed us where the communities have already passed these budgets. They've already been told that there might be monies available to them. And I don't want to be the one making those phone calls. And
What they do, they took the money appropriation.
yeah, they took it and put it for other programs. Now I, you know, in conversations with other people on our sides, which I won't make the names privy to, but there's about $39 million worth of monies that will not be a Senate priority, that were House priorities. I don't know where and how we're gonna claw back some of that monies. We've clawed back more Senate appropriations. The capital bill has clawed back about $20 million of that for 16.4 of match money and 3.5 for the St. Albans VTrans site. But man, I'll tell you what, I'd like to find some way that we could find at least another $4 million to get that back to $8 million or $10 million even, when they already have $13 million committed projects to, or $23 million of committed projects to, which we know that. So anyways, that's where my thinking is. I don't want to take away from this other $500,000 that we have. I want to keep that focus on that. I know that we could burn that money up real fast and put it towards what we we're just talking about, but I also want to keep the mission of helping as many people as we can with smaller amounts of money. So that's where I'm thinking. I'm also thinking that I'm gonna do a little homework. I'm gonna just again think out loud where we might be able to get some monies from with assurances that they would have abilities to get monies elsewhere, which I kind of have I've got those assurances, but again, conversations I can't have out loud yet because I can't verify them yet. But the state colleges might have access to other monies other than what's available here. So, but I want to make sure, yes.
But aren't they short 5 million because they have that mandate still, or are we gonna change that?
They were just cutting, they were cutting monies. They were cutting monies from wherever they were cutting monies to. And we're not privy to all what they were cutting.
Right,
only
I mean,
part of it
cutting
was-
to the bone, I don't wanna
Right.
be cutting money out of here for
Right.
them either, I just wanna be
Yeah, I
aware
get that,
they're
yeah.
in such bad shape.
Yeah,
And
they
buildings
are.
in some places, so don't forget that.
I just want to, no, and I don't want it either. And I will, if we can get assurances that maybe they have access to money elsewhere. And I can assure the committee that that might be something that we could fight for. You know, I just look at a lot of some of these projects where we're taking untreated waters, dumping them in areas that we don't want them to be in because of what we do in society.
That's why I oppose the fee increases, motor vehicle fee increases, because that money was there and they spent it now other ways. Now they want to raise the fees. It doesn't justify it because we started off, we didn't need that money
Right.
in the first place.
I guess the part that bothers me is there's just so many other places that if it would have came from, I wouldn't have been bothered by it. But when you start talking about dirty waters and all of that,
Especially when the towns passed their budgets.
when the towns did that. And
Promise, the promise, you think.
well, that's the part that's kind of what I look at.
But you gotta do it, happens all the time.
So, well, the easy part is I think that Dan could just change a zero here or there and he could find us that money.
Yeah. You can do it.
it's fine.
I think it'd be hard to, I mean, you'd probably be hurting something else in order to.
Right.
No, that's right.
That's the
My-
challenge.
My thing is to go across the hall. That's what I'm gonna go across the hall and join the line. Join, as they said today, the parade of people to the revolving door. And that, no, I agree with you, Dan, very much. I agree with you very much. It's gonna cause damage. So anyways, we have some stuff, we have some thoughts, and we put their thinking caps on. I do not want to lose focus on the smaller grants that we're talking about, so I'm gonna, again, you guys are going down the right path for that. Please keep going in that direction. Let's figure out as many people as we can help in that way. We're talking about the 500,000 for those grants, okay? So let's keep working in that direction. You're gonna work with Linda, get the people in, and some of the other, the line items, right?
I don't, no, I didn't think I had it.
Yeah, did you have
Oh,
some
just the
people?
cultural.
Yeah, the cultural, anybody, anybody else in those lines of stuff there?
I think.
And then Senator Collmore, gonna hear back from the water people. Even if we were to take 50 million, because they said they only really needed 125. Even if we could take 25 and 25 and help them out in another area, which would be capital bill worthy. And the reason I do that, and the only reason I do that, I hear Senator Mazza's point that once you go down there, but we also have to, at some point in time, recognize what what their pet projects were. And if we can go back to them and say, hey, listen, they didn't really need that, but they could have used it here. And we can stay out of a conference committee and fighting and going all that and not making them feel like we've taken over their bill and just done exactly what our will is. I'm looking for those olive leaves as well to be able to, to be able to smooth those transitions over. So.
So is there anyone you want to see tomorrow?
Oh, do we not have anyone for tomorrow yet?
We're almost ready.
We are, it's still over there a little bit. So yeah, we're getting close. So that's why we're getting close.
What we have left this week is just the cultural grants.
And if we don't have anybody tomorrow, we can start getting through this $500,000, okay?
Great.
So if we don't have anybody, but yeah, if you can get anybody in tomorrow. If not, we're going to just start going down through. I'm willing to start with some other conversations as well. Yes.
So we have this H102, the grant that's up on our wall. Can the person who's coming Friday also speak to that? Have you asked for already about that?
I'm sorry.
We have that H102 that's up on the wall with
Yeah.
cultural.
I
Can
haven't
the
had
Friday
any.
person, speak to that when they're here? I think it's the same department.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, makes sense.
Amy Cunningham.
Notice, I don't know if she can speak to it, but if she can't, maybe somebody else can speak to it.
Sure.
Because I don't think that should sit on the wall forever. I mean, forever, fall down.
That's already passed on us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.